finance meeting, committee meeting to order. And one thing I want to mention up front is we will have an executive session briefly to talk about personnel at approximately 3:30. We have a conference call with a representative from GMA. So we'll take a break then, but I think we can get through the agenda, our planned agenda in that amount of time. So on our approval list, we have minutes on items 1 and 2. Commissioner Elliott, any thoughts, comments?
No,
Either of us?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend, or I move to approve the minutes from the last meeting. And I also motion to approve the executive session minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second that. Chairman? Mr. Cook, any comments?
No comment.
Okay, I'll take a vote. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, sir, I have no comments.
Okay, so items 1 and 2 are approved. Item 3 is contract award for engineering services for water and sewer master plan update. And follow on from our facilities meeting last year.
Mr. Chairman, I don't really need further briefing on this.
Okay,
So I move that the Finance Committee recommend an increase in the budget in the amount of, in the budget amount for Project 2024 and award a contract for the water and wastewater master plan update to Fort Waters Engineering in the amount of $247,500.
any comments or questions, commissioners? Okay,
Nope.
those in favor? Okay, that passes. And then we have the, item 4 is the GFO loan approval. We also heard, that in the previous meeting for facilities. Any additional questions or comments about that, commissioners?
No,
If not, take a motion there.
I move to recommend to the full commission that the chairman and executive director be authorized to execute and attest to the appropriate loan documents to execute GFA loan CW 2019008 and to be so reflected on the attached Schedule F. I also recommend, or move to recommend to the full commission that the chairman, executive director, deputy director, and director of finance be authorized to sign for draws on GFA loan CW 19008.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Any discussion or question? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor, by hand, pass. And item 5 is the leak adjustment item.
Yes, sir. According to Glynn County ordinances, any leak adjustment totaling $2,000 or more must be presented to the commission for approval. Customer Mr. Bob Brown of Colony Place on St. Simons had a sizable leak on a 3/4 inch copper line coming into his home. Adjustment, once calculated, is $2,137.81. Staff recommends approving this leak adjustment to be credited to Mr. Brown's account.
Any questions?
Yes, just one. How long was this leak? How long a period of time did he have this leak?
Based off his usage, it looks like 2 months. Then the month of June and July of 2019, 19,000 and 24,000 gallons used those 2 months for residential customers, quite high.
This is exactly the kind of thing when we get the new meters in that would be flagged.
Flagged, yes.
That's correct. With the new meters, there would be a alarm sent to our staff. We could proactively call Mr. Brown and say, your water has been on for 24 consecutive hours. You likely have a leak. You need to investigate.
Right.
How many leak adjustments do we usually make a month?
In a month, we do several smaller leak adjustments, probably throughout the entire year. What would you say, a month? 20 or so a month?
Yes, sir.
Something of that nature. There will be just a little preview, in the next couple of months, there will be a sizable leak adjustment coming for a hotel that had a pool fill valve that was stuck, and they have ran up quite the bill. So there will be a large leak adjustment coming in the next month or two.
I guess my question, where was the valve at?
It was a pool fill valve, automatic fill valve on their pool. It's the project, it's under construction, and it was just running over into the storm drain for about 60 days.
I don't understand how they didn't know.
We asked that question, but they have got it fixed now. Their usage was about 30 times what it normally is.
Yeah, see, it was.
This leak you're talking about is like it's slab.
Yes, sir. It's been corrected. It was underneath the house when they heard the line, so that has been corrected.
Okay, so they have, they submitted the appropriate documentation from the, plumbing service to the repair. We made our estimates, based on the customer's consumption. So unless there are other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of the leak adjustment in the amount of $2,137.81 to the account of Mr. Bob Brown, and forward this item to the full commission.
I'll second. Any questions, comments, commissioners? Hearing none, in favor? Passes. Okay, we're up to item 6.
The auditor.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. In previous meetings, we had mentioned that there's a appointment of auditor coming up for the fiscal year ending 2020. Back in 2017, we put out a request for proposal for auditing services for three fiscal years. Malden and Jenkins was the awarded that contract at a cost of $19,900 per year for the fiscal years 18, 19, and then this final year of 6/30/20. You have in your packages the engagement letter from Malden and Jenkins, and from their original proposal, a timeline of work to be done during their time here at the well, actually, before they come to the audit, while they're here, and then work preparing the financial statements after their field work is completed, and and then a scope of services that will be provided during that, or scope of work that will be done during that time.
Okay, under meet with the commission management to discuss the scope, I'd like to add, with the chairman's permission, a meeting with the commissioners to discuss the audit, so that if there's anything that we have questions about, we can ask at that time.
And that is one thing that auditors do wish to have, is a meeting with the governing body, because typically there is an audit committee, or many times there is an audit committee composed of the governing body of the organization to meet with the auditors as well. So that's something that is really an enhancement to the audit.
Okay. Just to follow on, Commissioner Elliott, help my understanding, is this for the full commission, or would it be for the finance committee?
Well, it can be just the finance committee if you want to do it that way, that's fine with me, but the way I think of it is that we ought to have it for the finance committee, but allow any commissioner
Sure.
to attend.
And at what time would we want to have that? Because the timeline,
Doesn't provide
suggested in your
dates.
last pages would be next month. John, is that your thoughts, or would it be later in the timeline?
Actually, any time would be fine. Trey Scott, who is the partner in charge of this audit, is in Savannah, and he can come down at pretty much any time the commission would like to meet with him.
How much
Typ-
time would you suggest?
Most of their work won't begin until probably August timeframe, because they have to wait for, there's still invoices and other work that we have to do during July that can't be done prior to June 30th, so sometime in July would be probably, yes, sometime in July would probably be best before they begin their field work.
Okay. My thoughts is, let's have them on the agenda for a normal scheduled finance committee meeting. But what duration of time is appropriate for that agenda item? Is that a 20-minute item or?
Just to collect comments from the commission.
Here and have that discussion,
I wouldn't think it would take over 20 or 30 minutes. It depends on the scope of the things that you as commissioners want to talk about with him.
okay. Well, let's plan for it then.
Can I ask you a question? You want to speak with them early on in the process to determine what they're doing, or do you want to speak with them later on in the process when they're making their findings?
I think you speak to them twice.
I think so.
That's why I wasn't clear. Yeah, so speak to them at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can tell them what we're looking for, you know, some of the things, whatever like that. And then at the end, you know, what they have found, so we can.
why, I think that's a good approach,
All right, well, let's plan for it in the July meeting.
Second meeting in July.
Right, for the committee, finance committee meeting in July. And then it'll probably, looking at the timeline recommended by Malden and Jenkins, it looks like, it'll be in October timeframe to discuss, any findings and deliverables. So we can, also, put a placeholder out there for October, finance committee meeting too.
They are accustomed to that, as they have, in the past 2 years, come to present the audit to the commission upon its completion.
Okay, so at kickoff meeting, that's sort of a, risk of generating too much discussion is sort of a blank sheet, offering our preferences is what we want to see come to us. But by the time we get to the October meeting, we ought to see a document in advance of that meeting, so we'll be prepared
Yeah.
for discussion.
And that should also include not only the audit, but all management letters.
I got a question. Has Malden delivered our audit on time? They're timely,
Yes, sir, they have.
always? Okay.
Sometimes it's a little bit tight, because it does,
Right, I was.
October 15th is a bit of a short time frame, but that, as was originally required under the operational agreement with the city and the county and joint water sewer.
Right. Okay.
I have a question. Are there a number of new GASB standards, or do they change every year, or?
There are a large number of new pronouncements. The only one that really affects us are the new rules as far as leases. Previously, until this GASB is actually phasing in, but there were two types. There was an operating lease, which is written off as an expense, and then a capital lease, in which the leased asset was actually capitalized and depreciated. The new GASBs effectively eliminate operating leases, meaning if we lease a copier, we have to capitalize and depreciate it.
So you're still catching up with the other ones, and they're adding a few more?
Yeah. Fortunately, we had only copiers, and those leases have expired and been replaced, so it won't be a big issue in the audit.
Other questions or comments regarding the action before us? I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the JWSC Commission engage the accounting firm of Malden and Jenkins to perform the financial audit of the Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water Sewer Commission for fiscal year ending 30 June 2020 at a cost of $19,900.
I'll second that motion. Comments or questions, commissioners? Okay, hearing none, those in favor? Passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll move to the discussion items. Andrew?
Yes, sir. We've been talking for the last couple months about the timing of capital fee payments for new construction. Currently, these are due at the time of construction plan approval. There's been discussion amongst the commission that we'd like to move that to the time of building permit approval. We talked to Glynn County about putting a note on the final plat that states that even if it is platted but has not had a capital improvement fee paid, then there's no guarantee of capacity until that fee is paid. The county had some questions about that. Charlie talked with their attorney. Would you mind giving them a sort of a general?
Right, so, as a kind of a history, a number of years ago, 3, 4 years ago,
15 and 16.
15, 16, okay. Right when I came aboard, there was a bunch of litigation about, the sewer system being over capacity. And there were already developments that were already platted, and they claimed they had vested rights. And, they sued us to gain access to the system. Ultimately, well, anyway, the county, when I discussed this with them, decided or is concerned that if we go back to, well, hang on. In addressing that issue, we decided, through Commissioner Elliott's thoughtfulness, to make the developers pay the tap fees up front upon plat approval, so that we have the money in hand and can make those improvements when needed. And that essentially stopped all the litigation, and the fact that they realized they would spend less money working with us instead of against us. But the county, when I talked with the county attorney, voiced some concern about going back to the prior method. They are concerned that if we put the payment of tap fees on the building permit, then if we don't accept the tap fees, then they can't issue the building permit, and then we're both gonna get sued. So they are concerned that we're going back to the old way of doing business, and they would rather keep it the same.
But they did say that they would be happy for us to present that to their commission to consider a policy change, and we could have the plat note added if approved by their commission.
What would it say?
The plat note would say that water and sewer capacity is not guaranteed until the payment of capital improvement fees to the joint water and sewer.
I'd rather have the phrase stated in a positive.
Oh, yes,
that
right,
Capacity is guaranteed upon payment.
right.
And you say, go before the county commission for a change in policy.
It's a change to the plat note, which is a county document. So, the county is the owner of the plat document.
Okay, so we could have our policy.
Right.
Change, if we choose.
Right.
And I'm just presuming, we could also issue a letter to the developer, whether it's for one lot or multiples, stating the requirements and that when capacity is reserved or guaranteed, independent of county or the city, for that matter.
Right.
And then each governing agency can choose to adjust their policy if they so wish, but we could initiate a policy change independent,
Yes, sir, that, we had,
my understanding.
we had talked about maybe having the plat note on there would, if there was ever any sort of legal dispute later, would have, help us out, but we don't have to have that note on there to move forward. Maybe the letter that states that would help in that situation, but,
It
Well-
would, anything will help
Well,
The argument is all, I'm sorry.
okay, doesn't the plat note, you said what the plat note said, doesn't it say in the ordinance that it's guaranteed with the plat?
No,
No, sir.
the rate resolution says at the payment of capital fees.
Okay. I'm thinking back and I'm trying to remember why we had such a big fight over it.
Likely was.
Because
Final plat
when
note
the
said-
final plat,
Right.
and that's kind of the issue with the independent builders, because they would get plats, but they didn't want to pay the fees. And I understand that. And I think what we're really trying to rectify is for the small independent builders, not somebody that's gonna go out and build, West Point, so to speak. But you have township that's out there, and you would require them to have to pay up front under our policy. Well, that really doesn't make a lot of sense if their build-out is over 30 years.
Right.
So we just need to come up with some sort of accommodating language that doesn't put us in a situation in which we're guaranteeing space
Will let it work.
to everybody, and then waking up one day and finding out we don't have any capacity.
Because
And that's what we wound up
Right.
with. Nobody knew what our capacity was.
we want to avoid exceeding our capacity even though it's not actually consumed or used.
That's
when it's
correct.
committed.
Well, it is, in a sense, already. And we face that reality on St. Simon's. But when we went to this, we kind of stopped the flow so that didn't occur.
Now, that situation in 2016, we had severe capacity restrictions, which we have since alleviated. So part of the reasoning for that was the lack of capacity, which we have done a lot of work over the past 5 years to correct those issues.
I think we're looking at a different system today than we
Right.
did 5 years ago. Because we've advanced a lot of construction that has really improved our ability to serve the
Absolutely.
populace.
And we have a process within engineering to track our capacity, so at any time they know it. That's why when we first talked about it last month, I really wasn't all that concerned about it, because I felt that we had made adjustments within our organization, that the situation that occurred in 16, it may have been early 15, had been rectified organizationally from our standpoint.
I think directionally, we're looking the right way. That actually it will improve the opportunity for an individual who's owned a lot 25 years, for example, and now wants to move ahead in development, or somebody that does 10-lot subdivision as an example, that can develop that without significant financial investment. But as they sell the lots, those individual buyers contract to build, they pay the fees. The fees will be paid either way.
Right.
The question is simply the timing of it. One of the things we probably need to look at, Andrew, is thinking about how long is that commitment? And I don't know if we need to have that, but I'm just thinking here, Commissioner, is we want to avoid some of the rush to buy capacity
Yeah.
and then not develop for a long
That
time.
happens too, you're right.
And so, we need to have something actionable that's realistic without penalizing people who want to build their home.
Absolutely. And I think directionally, this would be a great move towards that. The discussion was whether we felt necessary to have the protection of that plat note or not. And if we can come up with a solution other than that, certainly an internal policy change would be all that was necessary.
I would suggest that we look at, one is that we would issue a letter, a capacity letter, if you will, or recognition of test, even though the county doesn't have it on their approved documentation.
Right.
The problem is the plat that's currently stated, it states that water and sewer are to be provided by Water Sewer Commission.
Yeah. Well, are you advocating that we really need to go ahead and go to the Board of Commissioners and change that note?
It would help, but I don't know that it would be determined. I don't know that they would, the court would still be on favor. Hopefully there won't be an issue, but I still don't know whether the plat note would be the end all.
Is the plat something that belongs to Glynn County or something that belongs to state, whatever? But they could change it. They could change it, couldn't they?
Well, I think we need to continue to lobby our friends over at Glynn County to advance this forward, but, I would not want that requirement on the plat to be a hindrance to someone to perform growth in our county that's going to employ people.
Yes, sir.
So I think that's what we need to do, try to work through that. Ideally, it'd be best if we get Glynn County's governance to endorse that. But short of that, I think we should be able to issue a commitment letter as to when capacity is available by lot or address, or et cetera.
Yes, sir.
And that supports the opportunity for folks to grow in the community.
Yes, sir.
Other thoughts or comments?
Well, it's a thorny problem because,
It is.
you know, we're oversubscribed on St. Simon's Island right now. So I don't know.
I think the easiest way is just to make sure we have capacity and when folks need it.
Yeah,
So,
but the issue that you have there is you may you may go out and pay money for infrastructure that you're never gonna use, or at least not use in the near term.
yes, sir.
So, of course, that was when we had the master plan that said we're gonna have all this building, which didn't occur.
Other questions, comments, concerns, gentlemen? Okay, thank you, Andrew. And we'll move to our final agenda item. If we can get through this, John, briefly, before we have to run to do our conference call.
Yeah, so
So we have some flexibility. Thank you. John?
my comments will be short anyway. You have in your packages the financial statements for the period ending April 30th, 2020. Beginning with the balance sheet, I'd like to start with the accounts receivable. Let's see that we are down to a net after allowance for doubtful accounts of $760,000. And you have a supplemental schedule that has columns of account balances and color coding for the dates we were closed and so on that Ms. Roberts had put together. You'll see at the end of April, we had a total of $1.636 million of receivables, and that is net of the 870, or and then net down the 876 allowance comes to the 760 on the balance sheet. And the periods that the office was shut down are the dates or the days that are coded in or kind of a yellow color. You'll see April 20th was about our highest receivable date, right in the middle of the shutdown, with a total receivables of $2.5 million. And since that time, they've come back down to about 1.96 million. So that amount is decreasing, though I think some people got a little bit behind during the right in the middle of the shutdown. And billing for this month is completing for today, so we have another, 5 or 6 days during this month to bring that $1.9 million back down to closer to the 1.3, 1.4 that we have been seeing for the past few months.
Which we suspected this would occur, given the situation. We have suspended late fees and cutoffs for the time being to give people the opportunity to get caught back up that have been impacted by this. So that, we haven't done that since March, so we're allowing people a chance to get caught up on their
Staff is
balances.
monitoring the accounts receivable on a daily basis.
So here's the big question, John, where are you gonna land this in 6 weeks?
That's on the third page in, Commissioner. The combined revenue statements for the 10 months ended. You'll see at the very top, the sewer revenues and the water revenues are under budget at this point, or as of April 30th, and they're projected to be somewhat under budget by year end. Compensating for that is a large increase in interest income for the year, along with reduced operating expenditures, or operating expenditures not being fully executed to budget levels. So down towards the bottom of the page, net revenue or loss before capital fees and SPLOST, you see that, and including our purchase orders, we're looking at about actual $394,000 to the good at this point during the year. Projecting out to year end, we're right about the $1 million mark that we've been projecting, plus or minus, for the past few months. However, that those projections are based on the historical billing for water and sewer for that point, so the full effect of March, April, and May may not be fully reflected in that. But
So based on what we've experienced in the last few months, about 6 more weeks to go, we're showing a projection that basically gonna land close to budget.
yes, sir. And revenues hopefully will start to rebound a little bit. The numbers show that our production and volume of water billed hasn't changed significantly. There has been a reduction, of course, but it hasn't changed as significantly as we thought it may have. But what has changed is a lot of the billings are in the lower tiers, where there's the commercial use that was concentrated in one account is now spread out to all of the employees that are staying home and other accounts, so their billings are falling lower on the tier blocks.
But ultimately, we're projecting right now revenues to be pretty much on budget for the end of the year and expenses to be under budget for the end of the year.
By how much?
We're looking at, based off the projection, we ran about $1 million difference between revenues and expenses.
My understanding at one point that revenues had almost no change, just other than where it was being.
That's correct. The usage rates have essentially not changed. It's just more residential than commercial usage. So the revenues haven't fluctuated a tremendous amount. There's been a slight decrease because of the increasing block rate structure that we have, but we're still going to end up pretty close to hitting budget on revenues.
It hasn't been a tremendous effect. It's just
Yeah, I kind of thought we were gonna see that, but that's okay.
And, you know, the last comment is on the project cost summary, which is the last page of the reserve balances for projects. We have available balances in the last column. The one thing I wanted to point out was the repair and replacement reserve. We see an available balance of $2.48 million. That's the available balance after all of the budgeted items for this coming fiscal year. We have sufficient money to complete that list of CIP projects and still have room to absorb a few more projects if they pop up during the year. And that includes my comments.
Okay. Commissioners, questions, comments, please? Okay, John, 6 more weeks. Land on the numbers, okay? Looking good. Thank you very much.
We'll bring it in.
Concludes the discussion item agenda. We have executive session to go to.
Yeah, did we have that on the agenda?
Well, we did, you just mentioned.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move to add an item to the agenda, an executive session
And that'll be for
for personnel.
personnel. Thank you. I'll second motion. Comments, questions by other commissioners? Those in favor, show us aye. We'll move to executive session.
No, I move to go into executive session. I'm sorry, sir.
Thank you. Second.